What's up YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today we're looking at a pretty unique Sableye list from Japan in their extra format, and we'll also be looking at my expanded format adaptation of it, since there are changes in card legality, meta, and structure of the tournaments between Japan and outside of Japan. But first, shout out to my sponsor, PotownStore.com. You can use code Celio for 5% off there, and they specialize in PTCGO codes that are emailed out right after you purchase them. And also use code Celio, all caps, for 10% off at flipsidegaming.com, where I write weekly free articles. So, the Sableye list, this is the one from Japan, and this actually won the Open League Extra part of the Champion League Aichi 2020. You might have seen some videos and results from the Standard part of that with Sword and Shield and Standard. But this is the Open League, or the extra side of that tournament. I'm not exactly sure how many players were in it and what other decks did well. They did show one round of it during the stream. One of the decks were Ultra Necrozma Garbodor. But I'm sure Limitless will collect some of the information, and we'll see some of the information get tweeted out eventually on the other placements in the tournament and how many people were in the extra part of the Champion League. But this Sableye list won the extra format side of the Champion League. So just right off the bat, we can look at a couple cards that aren't legal in the expanded format. So Puzzle of Time, which there are 4 of in this list, are not legal and expanded. And then the 2 of Stadium next to Tropical Beach, which is called Player Ceremony, that is also not legal. And if you don't know what Player Ceremony does, it's like Tropical Beach, but you draw 2 cards and then end your turn. So it's kind of like if you already have a hand of 7+, you would use that instead of Tropical Beach kind of thing. And then Puzzle of Time, of course, if you're a bit newer to the game, you might not know what it does. It's if you play one puzzle, you get to look at the top 2 cards and rearrange them. If you play 2 puzzle at the same time, then you get any 2 cards from your discard pile back to your hand. It was a really great card in every format that it was available in, but it has rotated out of Standard and it has been banned and expanded. So we will have to take out the 4 puzzles and also the 2 player ceremonies. But we'll talk about that when we get to my list for the deck. So what's unique about this deck is it is not playing Garbodor side by side with Sableye as we are used to. We're used to it being Sableye Garbodor. That's the archetype. So this deck is not focusing on a hand lock. It's not necessarily focusing on any lock at all. They are playing counter catchers, but they're not playing things to help you lock the opponent up, like a Mount Lanakila or a T-Mock with Secret Base, or Wondrous Labyrinth to stop them from being able to attack, or Power Plant or Silent Lab or the Garbodor to stop things like Darkrai EX's Dark Cloak for giving things free retreat. It's really focusing on milling and outlasting your opponent. So they have the 4 Lily Doll and the 4 Robo Substitute, and then they have the milling cards like Belelba and Bryson Man, Team Rocket's Handiwork, and the Bunnelby, and also the Durant here is kind of a pseudo-mill card. It has the attack Chip Off, which is similar to Persian from Team Up's Make 'em Pay. So what Chip Off does is if your opponent has more than 4 cards in their hand, they discard cards randomly down to 4. Whereas Persian is an evolution, but you get to choose, so there's kind of a trade-off there, but I think Durant is really, really good for being a basic Pokemon and able to just empty your opponent's hand of resource at random. But if they have like 10 cards in hand, chances are you'll hit something out of the 6 you're discarding at random that they did not want you to discard. This is using the Life Dew to stop your opponent from taking prizes when they're hitting things that aren't the Robo Substitutes and the Lily Dolls. You'll see in my list I'll be running Alana's Fishing Rod, but they had Puzzle of Time, so they could get back the Life Dew pretty easily that way. And also, since they're not running Garbodor, and they're not running Wobbuffet, and they're not running any Pokemon that draw them cards, they can use Green's Exploration, so they're playing 4 of that. And another really interesting thing is the Mimikyu with Impersonation. So the Mimikyu with Impersonation from Cosmic Eclipse allows you to discard a supporter card from your hand as its attack, and then use that supporter card. So you can essentially like Team Rocket's Handiwork versus Seeker 4, and then Team Rocket's Handiwork again. Or the same thing with Belelba and Bryson Man, or use a utility supporter like Flare Grunt or Faba, which surprisingly they didn't play Faba, and then discard Steven's Resolve and use it as your second supporter for turn. So it's really cool that you can get around the one supporter thing, even though Lieutenant Surge has been banned from the expanded format. So now, why don't we take a look at my list for the deck adapted for our expanded format here. So I've made quite a few changes, and these are theorized out. I did play some games with different lists of Sableye. I've actually been playing with a ton of Sableye, but mostly with Sableye Garbodor. So I've gotten a few games in and against non-Garbodor Sableye decks. This is one I threw together. I don't think it has any glaring obvious faults to it, but of course there are differences, like I said, because we don't have the Puzzle of Times and we don't have the player ceremonies. I've opted not to play the Tropical Beaches. If I wanted to, I would just put in Gray One, since I have not been able to trade build up enough PTC Geocodes to trade for Tropical Beaches yet. But I do think Power Plant and Team Aqua's Secret Base are worth experimenting with. Like I said, the Japan list did not have things to help it lock things into the active spot, and I think that could be really good to give you even more time to mill and deck out your opponent. So the strategy is you want to make them have to go through the 4 Lilies Polka Doll and the 4 Robo Substitute, and so by the time they get to your Sableyes and your Mimikyus, that's already 8 turns later. That's 8 extra cards they drew. That's 8 extra turns they maybe played supporters to draw more cards. 8 extra turns where you could Trick Shovel and Handiwork them and remove some resources with like your Flare Grunt and your Faba. And even just build up your hand. If they reset stamp you, you're going down to 6 cards because you're not taking prizes. So if they end you, you're going down to 6 cards because you're not taking prizes. And like I said, I'm playing the Lana's Fishing Rod. So that's shuffle a Pokemon and a Pokemon tool card from your discard pile into your deck. So if they knock out Sableye with a Life Dew on it, and Life Dew prevents them from taking a prize card, or they take 1 fewer prize cards, so your Sableye gets knocked out, they take 0 prizes. Lana's Fishing Rod, Sableye, and the Life Dew back in, and then you can just use Rosa to get the Sableye, the Life Dew, and your basic Dark Energy. So looking at it like that, the deck's pretty simple, but it's actually not simple at all. You have to make big decisions on if you are able to impersonate for a turn to get an extra supporter in, or if you need to junk hunt for resources, or if you need to sit behind some dolls or robo substitutes. The Bunnelby is actually, it serves 2 purposes. One, of course, it can mill, so the Burrow, discard the top card of your opponent's deck, but it can also get you back resources with Rototiller, shuffle a card from your discard pile into your deck. So I'm playing the Bunnelby over playing an Oranguru because I really don't like Oranguru in here. If I was playing Belelba and Bryson Man, I might play Oranguru because you can replace the 3 that you milled. And if you're aggressively milling your opponent and you know you're going to win, then just going Belelba, Bryson Man, mill 3, shuffle, resource manage back a Belelba can work. But I've chosen to just play the Handiworks in this list for now. And also, Bunnelby, of course, has the Omega Barrage. This Pokemon may attack twice a turn, so you can Burrow and Rototiller, or just do one of them twice. The Burrow is really good, the Rototiller is really good, but sometimes you'll just be able to impersonate a Team Rocket's Handiwork and get an average of 2 cards milled, but you can guarantee milling 2 cards with Burrow. And then, like I was mentioning, the chip off, this Durant's really not used too much. I think it might see an uptick in play because of this list. Chip off, discard cards from your opponent's hand at random until they have 4 cards in their hand. So, like I said, it's kind of like the Make 'em Pay Persian. And I've also added Giraffe. Get Lost can be good for a lot of reasons. Like if your opponent lets their 1 AZ or their 1 Guzma or their 2 copies of either of those cards go into the discard pile and they don't versus Seeker for them back, you can Get Lost them, so then you can easily lock something up. And if you, with this deck, if you get something just stuck in the active, you're going to win pretty quickly if your opponent's not doing anything to you. If you are just allowed to go handiwork versus seeker, impersonate handiwork, handiwork impersonate versus seeker handiwork, or double trick shovel junk hunt, double trick shovel junk hunt. If you are able to do that after you've successfully locked something into the active with your counter catcher, I think you'll probably win pretty quickly. So I think having outs to locking your opponent's Pokemon that can't attack or has a high retreat cost active, I think it's pretty important to have outs to that, which is why I've included the Power Plant and the Team Aqua Secret Base, and like I said, the Giraffe to get lost some utility supporters. So this list is definitely still in the works. I don't think you can just automatically translate it over from Japan to English and it will work after replacing those cards. I think there's some tinkering to do with it, but I think there's something really, really busted here for Dallas. Like I said, I don't think I have it quite yet. I don't think this is the 100% filth, but I do think we're onto something here, and I do think Japan had a really crazy list that worked really well for them. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to let me know what content you want to see more of. Hit the subscribe button to see more of said content. And I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.